and welcome. You have tuned into World Business Report here on News 9 Live, where we get you all the latest in the world of business, economy, finance, technology, entertainment, and more from all across the world. I'm Krishna Kumar. We begin with Elon Musk and Tesla, which is set to make a significant move into the Indian market. According to media reports, Tesla plans to send a team to India this month to scout locations for a proposed $2 to $3 billion worth electric car plant. This decision follows India's recent move to lower import taxes on certain electric vehicles, providing incentives to car makers to invest in local production or make in India. Tesla's focus will be on states like Maharashtra, Gujarat, and Tamil Nadu, known for their automotive hubs and access to ports for easier exports. Now, this move signals Tesla's long-awaited entry into India, as CEO Elon Musk has been in talks with Indian government officials for over a year now. The investment from Tesla could be a major boost for Prime Minister Narendra Modi's government, particularly up ahead of the upcoming Lok Sabha elections. Analysts anticipate that Tesla's entry could spur further EV or electric vehicle investments into India and benefit local auto parts makers in the process. Meanwhile, tech major Apple has resolved issues with its services, including the App Store and its streaming platforms Apple TV Plus and Apple Music, after outages affected users across various regions. Problems also surfaced with Apple Fitness Plus, Apple Arcade, audiobooks, books, and podcasts. The outage, which began at around 10:13 p.m. London time or GMT on Wednesday, impacted users in the US, UK, India, China, and Australia, lasting for over an hour. Now, it's reported that more than 6,400 user complaints about the App Store and over 1,000 reports each for Apple TV Plus and Apple Music were received at the peak of the outage in the US. Meta-owned WhatsApp and Instagram services have been restored as well following a global outage. The two communication apps experienced disruptions for users worldwide beginning at around 11:45 p.m. India time on Wednesday. Users attempting to access Instagram and WhatsApp encountered error messages indicating that the service was unavailable. WhatsApp acknowledged the issue, stating that they are working to resolve it. Instagram users face difficulties refreshing feeds or viewing stories. Now, this follows a similar outage last month in March, affecting Instagram, Facebook, and Threads, with users experiencing sudden logouts and authentication issues. Alphabet's CEO Sundar Pichai emphasized the company's unwavering commitment to perfecting its artificial intelligence chat models while prioritizing user trust worldwide. Speaking at the 2024 Business, Government and Security Society Forum at Stanford Graduate School of Business, Pichai stressed the importance of getting technology right and maintaining user trust as the company's quote-unquote North Star. With generative AI gaining so much traction, Pichai acknowledged its potential but highlighted the need for caution due to its immaturity and propensity for errors. He also discussed artificial intelligence's impact on the job market, foreseeing its integration across various professions while acknowledging the potential for societal disruptions. Listen in.
Again, for us, I think it's an area where we will be deeply committed to getting it right. How do you do it in a way in which you represent the wide range of views that are held by people around the world? And I think there are many aspects to it. The issues with AI models are not just at Google. You see it across other models as well. We are always held to a high bar, and we welcome that bar because that's what helps us make the products better and get it right. But I think in AI, there are a lot of tools you can think about. How do you let users at scale give more input into these models, and how do you reflect it? To the extent where there are multiple viewpoints, maybe making sure the model captures and gives you both viewpoints compared to trying to answer it in one correct way. These are all evolutions of the product, which are easy to do, and I think we will do. But I think the North Star for us is making sure we do right by users. And our users come from everywhere in the world, around the world, in the US from all states. Running a business, we have a business imperative to get it right, because we rely on that user trust to continue the success we have had. So I think all the incentives will be in the right direction to make progress there.
Now, on to the latest from the world of artificial intelligence in this roundup, where we tell you all about ChatGPT getting accessible to Microsoft and OpenAI coming together for a data center worth $100 billion. Take a look at this roundup.
From how ChatGPT was set free to why Microsoft is opening the Stargate, this is AI Weekly. ChatGPT can now be used without signing up to the service. Maker OpenAI says it's gradually rolling out the move to make the technology accessible to anyone. ChatGPT kickstarted the AI boom in late 2022, going on to set records for the speed of growth in user numbers. The US has tightened restrictions on the supply of cutting-edge AI chips to China. Washington has been cracking down amid concerns the tech could help Beijing's military. The new rules clarify that the curbs on chips also apply to products like laptops that contain them. AI is coming to the South Pacific. It will top the agenda alongside climate change at a meeting of Commonwealth countries in Samoa in October. Patricia Scotland is Secretary General of the organization that brings together 56 nations, many with links to the former British Empire.
We know that AI and digitalization is likely to put about 5.7 trillion onto the world's economy by 2030. But if the small and developing states are left behind, then their opportunity to take advantage of that huge potential increase in development and opportunity is going to be gone.
Microsoft and OpenAI are working on a data center that could cost as much as $100 billion. That's according to The Information. It says the project could include an AI supercomputer called Stargate, set to start running in 2028. And America's benchmark S&P 500 stock index surged to its best first quarter in 5 years, driven in large part by AI. The index leapt over 10%, and it wasn't just Nvidia powering the gains. Other chip stocks like ARM and Supermicrocomputer jumped too, while Astera Labs more than doubled following its IPO.
And keeping it with Wall Street, where stocks closed mostly higher after Wednesday's trading session amidst a mixed day of trading, influenced by economic data and remarks from US Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell, who suggested that an interest rate cut remains distant. The Dow slipped slightly, the S&P 500 edged up, and the Nasdaq saw a modest climb. Despite slower than expected growth in the US services industry, stocks were up initially in hopes of a rate cut, which now seems more and more distant. This Reuters report gets you a detailed roundup of all the action on Wall Street.
U.S. stocks finished mostly higher Wednesday after a muted session, following a mixed bag of economic data and comments from Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell, who said a cut in interest rates was still not in sight. The Dow slipped 0.1%, while the S&P 500 added 0.1%, and the Nasdaq climbed 0.2%. A report from the Institute for Supply Management showed slower than expected growth in the U.S. services industry. That lifted stocks in morning trading on investor hopes that the data might support a rate cut in the near future. But Powell's comments during a speech at Stanford indicated the Fed will stick to its wait-and-see approach as it considers when to start cutting rates. Retirement Planners of America CEO and founder Ken Moraif said regardless of when the Fed starts cutting rates, stocks are due for a fall.
We started the year with a phenomenal run. And so what we're anticipating is that given the fact that the market has run so fast, so high, that we should be getting a correction of some kind here in the near future. On average, we average one correction a year if you go back the last 50 years. And a correction is a drop of 10% in the stock market, but not 20%.
Individual stocks on the move included Intel, which fell 8% after it disclosed an operating loss at its foundry business last year that widened by about $2 billion. And shares of Ulta Beauty plunged 15% after the cosmetics retailer gave a downbeat forecast at an industry conference.
Now, investor concerns over inflation and the U.S. Federal Reserve's interest rate policies found some relief. A report from the Institute for Supply Management in the U.S. revealed softer growth in the U.S. services sector for the month of March. Notably, business prices dropped to a 4-year low, offering optimism for inflation going forward in the U.S. Take a look at this detailed report.
Investors worried about inflation and the timing of interest rate cuts by the Federal Reserve got some relief on Wednesday. A report from the Institute for Supply Management showed softer than expected growth in the U.S. services sector in March. Particularly lifting investors' spirits was prices paid by businesses, which dropped to a 4-year low, a reading that bodes well for the inflation outlook. That boosted Wall Street's main indexes Wednesday morning. Stocks had come under pressure before the opening bell after a report showed private sector hiring in March grew faster than predicted, and February's job growth was revised higher. The data from ADP also said wages for workers remaining in their jobs increased 5.1% on a year-on-year basis, after a similar gain in February. Traders expect the Fed to start reducing rates in June, according to the CME FedWatch tool. But Atlanta Fed President Raphael Bostic said on Wednesday that the central bank should only cut rates once this year and not until the fourth quarter. The focus is now on the Labor Department's employment report on Friday, which is expected to show hiring increased by 200,000 jobs in March.
Now, tech major Intel has revealed rising losses in its chip-making unit with a deficit of $7 billion in the year 2023, marking a major increase from the previous year. Revenues also plunged by nearly a third, prompting a more than 4% drop in the company's stock prices following the disclosure of these figures. More in this report.
Intel says it faces deepening losses at its chip-making unit. The tech giant said Tuesday that the foundry business, which makes chips for itself and other firms, faced a deficit of $7 billion in 2023, well up on a year before. Revenues also tumbled, dropping by close to a third. Shares in the firm fell over 4% after documents showing the numbers were filed with regulators. In a presentation to investors, Chief Executive Pat Gelsinger said this year would be even worse. But he said the unit would get back to break-even by 2027. Gelsinger says the business has been weighed down by bad decisions. That includes a failure to use the most advanced types of chip-making machines. Intel has had to outsource more production as a result. The company has now bought the advanced extreme ultraviolet machines made by Dutch firm ASML and says it will regain competitiveness as a result. It also now plans to spend $100 billion on building or expanding chip plants in the US. But a business turnaround for the foundry will depend on persuading other firms to use its manufacturing services. Intel has lagged rivals TSMC and Samsung in that market.
And keeping it with the US, workers at fast food giants in the state of California are celebrating as their minimum wage increases to $20 per hour this week, up from the $16 minimum. This raise applies to chains or fast food chains with 60 or more nationwide locations across the US.
Around 500,000 workers at California fast food chains began receiving a $20 an hour minimum wage this week. That's up from the state's previous $16 minimum and applies to chains with 60 or more locations nationwide. While workers say the raise helps pay the bills, business owners like Brian Holm are worried about higher operating costs. He's already increased prices between 5 and 10% in response to the new minimum.
And eventually, as time goes on, if we're not making a profit, we would have to close down.
For 7 years, he and his wife have owned 2 Vitality Bowls superfood cafe franchises in South San Jose. Between the 2 locations, they have about 3 dozen employees, which they say are mostly young adults in high school and college. California Governor Gavin Newsom said one goal of the pay bump passed last September was to make the state's economy more inclusive. 66-year-old Holm isn't so sure.
Kind of a catch-22, I know, where people want higher wages, but at the same time, the costs to run the business, it doesn't work out. Maybe corporate stores can, but most of the small stores are, run by, people of color, people that have immigrated, women, and, seniors like me, right? I'm a senior and I'm trying to run a business for my family. And, if it goes down, then my family goes down too.
However, fast food workers like Ingrid Velorio have a brighter outlook on the wage bump.
I
think the new minimum wage somewhat alleviates the heavy cost of living in California. That's what this new salary does, ease the cost of living a little.
Velorio has worked at Jack in the Box for 4 years. In that time, she has seen her employers cut hours and increase work. And now she says they're upset they have to pay their workers more.
Each employee does the work of 2 or 3 people. And the saddest thing right now that we're experiencing as employees is that instead of the employer being happy about this increase, a minimal one for the worker, instead they're angry that they have to raise their employees' salaries.
The economic bottom line of the hourly bump is not clear-cut. Some studies suggest a minimum wage hike can reduce hours in hiring, like the Vitality Bowl owner Holm mentioned, while others point to better outcomes for workers. And it also remains unclear how much pressure businesses not affected by the law will feel to raise their wages to match those that are.
Now, in a bid to set international norms for activities on the moon, National Aeronautics and Space Administration, or NASA of the US, has been tasked by the White House to establish a unified time standard for the moon, referred to as Coordinated Lunar Time, or LTC. This directive aims to synchronize timekeeping for lunar spacecraft and satellites. This Reuters report tells you all about it.
It's 5:24 p.m. Central Time, but know that there is some give and take.
It comes as no surprise that moon time differs from Earth time. As the U.S. aims to set international norms amid a growing lunar race, the White House has given NASA a directive to establish a unified time standard for the moon. NASA must work with other parts of the U.S. government to set Coordinated Lunar Time, or LTC, by the end of 2026. That's according to a memo seen by Reuters from the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy, or OSTP. Here's what's at play. The differing gravitational force and potentially other factors on the moon change how time unfolds relative to how it is perceived on Earth. The OSTP memo says that for a person on the moon, an Earth-based clock would appear to lose about 58.7 microseconds per Earth day. Having a standard time would provide a timekeeping benchmark for lunar spacecraft and satellites that require extreme precision. Under its Artemis program, NASA is planning more astronaut missions to the moon in coming years. It aims to establish a scientific lunar base that could help set the stage for future missions to Mars. Dozens of companies, spacecraft, and countries are involved in the effort. Other countries also have their own lunar ambitions. China has said it aims to put its first astronauts on the moon by 2030, while India last year became the first country to land a spacecraft near the unexplored lunar South Pole. An OSTP official said that without a unified lunar time standard, it would be challenging to ensure data integrity and synchronized communications between Earth, lunar satellites, bases, and astronauts. Time discrepancies could also lead to errors in mapping and locating positions on or orbiting the moon, the official said. On Earth, most clocks and time zones are based on Coordinated Universal Time, or UTC. This internationally recognized standard relies on a vast global network of atomic clocks placed around the world. They measure changes in the state of atoms and generate an average that ultimately makes up a precise time. The deployment of atomic clocks on the lunar surface may be needed, according to the OSTP official. The OSTP memo says that implementing LTC will require international agreements through existing standards bodies and among the 36 nations that have signed a pact called the Artemis Accords, which involve how countries act in space and on the moon. China and Russia, the two main U.S. rivals in space, have not signed the accords.
Now, the Crosby-Schoen Codex, originating from Egypt and dating back to 250 to 350 AD, stands as one of the oldest books known to exist. The codex's estimated value of up to $3.8 million underscores its rarity and historical importance. Christie's will host the auction for this remarkable artifact on the 11th of June, drawing attention from collectors and scholars alike. Take a look.
So we've got all of the, okay, so there's Jonah the Prophet. So Jonah starts It's right at that period when, that transitional period when papyrus scroll starts turning into codex form, so books as we know them today. And what we have in this book is the earliest known texts of two books of the Bible. So the earliest known text of the first epistle of Peter and the earliest known text of the book of Jonah. So crucially important from a textual perspective, from a perspective of Bible studies. You think about the time frame and the immediacy of those very, very early Christians to the period of Jesus Christ. You have, it's only a couple of hundred years away. And they're learning how to celebrate Easter. And this is a witness to that, to that earliest ritual.
Beyonce shared her insights on innovation and mental resilience and delivered a powerful message at an award ceremony held at Los Angeles' Dolby Theater. Take a look at this.
Thank you to iHeartRadio. Tonight, you call me an innovator, and for that, I'm very grateful. Innovation starts with a dream, but then you have to execute that dream, and that road can be very bumpy. Being an innovator is seeing what everyone believes is impossible. Being an innovator often means being criticized, which often will test your mental strength. Being an innovator is leaning on faith and trusting that God will catch you and guide you. So, to all the record labels, every radio station, every award show, my hope is that we're more open to the joy and liberation that comes from enjoying art with no preconceived notions. And I want to dedicate this award to all the innovators who have dedicated their lives and their art to creating shifts.
And with that, is a wrap here on this edition of World Business Report. Thank you so much for watching, but don't go anywhere. We'll be back with Business Plus on the other side.